Welcome to the Youth Sport Podcast. My name is Rihanna Poskin, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly within youth sport. It feels great when a kid comes up to you and says, "Coach, because of you, my life changed in the best way." It would feel awful to hear that because of you, the coach, a kid doesn't want to have anything to do with it ever again. I believe that kids deserve to have fun, to learn, to grow, to compete, and to play in a great environment. Join me as I interview guests that spill the tea on youth sport in order to help you make an enormous impact with kids right now. This episode of the Youth Sport Podcast is brought to you by Lululemon. I am part of the Lululemon Collective and will receive commissions when you shop through my link. Buying something for you or your loved ones, like my favorite warm down joggers, helps me to continue to bring interesting and empowering conversations for everyone. I have to tell you, when I'm coaching, I want to make sure that I'm dressed appropriately, I'm comfortable, my clothes stand up to all kinds of random situations, and that I have pockets. You never know who's going to ask you to hold something for them or what random things you need to carry with you. The Lululemon warm down joggers take care of all of my needs. I invite you to find your go-to item by browsing through the entire Lululemon site. You won't be disappointed. Please use the link provided in the video description below to start shopping. Welcome back to another episode of the Youth Sport Podcast. This episode is going to be fun. Fun for me. I hope it's fun for you. My college roommate is here today. Stephanie Daniel is my guest. Stephanie is a phys ed teacher and youth sport coach currently in North Carolina, where she was just named Teacher of the Year. Stephanie played multiple sports her whole life and ended up at California University of PA, just like me, to compete in college soccer. Stephanie's family has moved many times around the world due to her husband's military assignments, which will be part of what we talk about today. We'll talk about Steph's story in the US and what she learned and what she can share of her journeys in different parts of the world. So thanks so much, Steph, for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's weird for you to say Steph.
I know. So we'll explain that. Your maiden name is Hannon, and you got the nickname Hannah from everybody. And so we just always called you Hannah. So it's weird for me to say too. So whichever, we can interchange it on the conversation. But...
Sure. Let's just confuse people. That would be great.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
It's fine.
But real quick, I just wanted to say thank you to you because entering into a new country, a new team, a new school was nerve-wracking for me. And you made that entry so much better because we ended up living together and we met in training camp and it was awesome. And we hit it off right away. And then we ended up switching up our roommates, which worked out for the previous assigned roommates as well as for us because they were really good friends and then we were really good friends. So it all worked out okay. But I really just wanted to say that it was cool because you were such an interesting person because you always wanted to play and you had this just kid-like spirit in you all the time, whether it be just wanting to go to the field to kick around or whether it would be ultimate frisbee or signing up for intramurals in the campus gym, all of those different things. And you just were just on for everything. And I think that made us just have a lot more fun around you too, because you were just the one that was just like, let's go do something. And then you were also the person that was looking out for everybody, making sure that people were getting along, making sure that people weren't doing stupid things at parties. And if they did, that you were around to be able to help out. So for so many reasons, you helped so many of us. And I just wanted to say thank you for being there.
Oh, well, that's sweet. Yeah. Some people call it playing. Other people just say I'm super competitive and can't sit still. So that's cool. Yeah, I know. My nickname, Mama Hannah. Yeah, I was like, wait, what? How am I the person taking care of people?
Yeah. Well, you ended up doing it. I think there was just a radar on you where it was just kind of like, you know what? I kind of have to pay attention because I don't really like what's going down here. And if someone's not watching, something's going to happen. So I think with whatever circle you're riding in, you need to have someone like you in there. So
Oh, thanks.
I'm sorry that there's extra responsibility that falls onto you in that respect, but I feel like you were a great person to have in our circle for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, I had fun being responsible too. It's not like I didn't have my moments of irresponsibility, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So we would
we
take
had a good
turns.
time. Oh yeah.
We did. And coach always said, you know what, one of these days you're going to wake up dead. And he
Yeah.
said, these are the best years of your life. And we're kind of like, oh, yeah, okay. And then you look back and it's like, yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, they were. We cannot get away with that stuff now, for sure.
No. Okay. So leading into the conversation for today, I wanted to get a sense of where you're at now, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I want to know what you were like as a kid and how sport kind of played a huge role in your upbringing. And then just a little bit of your story. So, what were you like as a kid?
I was a total tomboy. I grew up in like a really, there's a lot of kids in my neighborhood, but there was no girls really my age. There was all boys. And kind of like you said, we played any sport. We made up sports. We were outside until like the street lights came on and we were just playing.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were like in the woods pretending we were, whatever, soldiers and hiding and building tree forts. And other times we were playing football. We made in my driveway, we made a tennis court one summer
Yeah.
with like picnic benches and stuff. And we played that like hardcore, so it was really fun.
Yeah. Super competitive, I bet. Even though it was a driveway setup, I bet it was the stakes were high.
Oh yeah, and there's like just four of us. So it was like two people were playing, the other two people were getting water, and then we would switch really quickly, until my mom yelled at us that we were being too loud or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, but she probably appreciated that you were outside of the house doing that instead of creating all of these games inside.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And real quick before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to your mom because okay, I have to kind of set the tone here where every so often you would invite me back because we were close to your home in respect to where we went to university. And
Right, we were
so
45 minutes away.
yeah, so we go back to your place and if it was a holiday season, your mom was just over the top with those holidays. And I was like, I've never seen anything like this before, where like bins and bins and bins of things. It's like, here's Halloween, here's Christmas. And like even walking into, so maybe it was actually at one of your aunts where I walked into a house, it must have been a relative. And I was like, oh my gosh, they changed the soap dispensers, they changed
Yeah.
the towels, they changed like everything. Everything was like the theme was in there. And I was like, wow, this is pretty magical. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I think that was my aunt's house. I mean, my mom definitely has Christmas tree soap dispensers and things like that. But my aunt, Sue, I think you guys came home with me that one year and we went there. Every room in her house is like a different theme.
Yeah,
It's
it's
crazy.
incredible. Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
really neat for me because I think American families, I'm not going to speak for everybody across the board, but there's something that's really patriotic about just being in the United States of America. And I mean, lots of countries are very patriotic, but you can
Right.
definitely see it with the flags outside of the homes. And so getting immersed into the feel of what it was like to be in an American family and everything was really cool for me, just being from Canada. It's not that far, but still, there were some differences. So it was neat
Oh,
to go
yeah.
back to your home. And then we went to visit our friend Anne Marie in Ohio. And so then we
Yeah.
different taste over there. So wherever we were drivable, we could go and just see how people had grown up, even though we were close enough to school. So it was so cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like when I came to Canada, like you guys, you showed me around your cottage with your family and stuff. That was awesome.
Yeah, we had a good time there too. It's a longer drive, but I'm glad you guys did make the journey to check it out. And that's kind of where Mike and I started dating. So it worked out for me too.
Yeah. No, that summer was the best.
We had a good time because no responsibilities, right? We could just
No.
pick up and go. Yeah.
Oh, you
Now
want to go to Canada for a week? Yeah, sure. Let's go to Rihanna's family's cottage. No
yeah.
problem.
And now these poor kids who are in COVID situations, they can't even leave their health unit, let alone going to a different country right now. So
Right?
yeah, these things that we never even had to think about. Okay. So you were drawn to all kinds of activities. You were a tomboy, you were involved in lots of different things. What sports did you play that was organized?
I played a lot of soccer. So I probably had ADHD like as a kid and I could not sit still, go figure, same way in college.
Uh-huh.
But like my parents were like, you have to do something organized. So I played, they got me into soccer, I think when I was 6. And then we had a basketball hoop, and I was always playing basketball. So I also started playing basketball on certain teams as well, probably around the age of 8, I would guess. But soccer was my first organized sport.
Okay, and so with you being the kind of kid that was always on the go, if you could kind of give some advice to a coach that might be listening, if you've got a kid that is like you, what would be your coaching tips to get the most out of a person like you?
Gosh, just kind of be supportive, I guess, and um like try and build their confidence and stuff, because a lot of times like they're getting yelled at, like, sit down, no, we can't do this,
Right.
and like
Yeah.
at practice that's like their outlet. So
Right.
just let them have fun and let them move a lot, and just let them get all that energy out, and try and maybe come up with like creative ways that, instead of sitting down, like if they got out in a drill, like instead of sitting down, like they're doing jumping jacks, or they have to do something like that just to keep getting all that energy out.
Yeah, so rather than disciplining them for having that extra edge inside of them, finding a way to kind of nurture it a little bit is what you're
Right.
saying? Yeah. And
Yeah.
I totally agree with what you're saying, because if a kid is constantly being told no, 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 sit still, but their body is just that's just a part of who they are, then it must be very frustrating to constantly be hearing that and then not have a place where you can let it all out, especially with school, because you have to be so conformed within that learning environment. And maybe a kid does just need to move around a little bit, and that might help their learning.
Yeah, that's like when I'm teaching PE, I literally try and strive, because I only see the kids for 40 minutes every time I see them. So
Okay.
I'm always like, they can't be sitting for more than 5 minutes that entire time. Like they
Yeah.
need to be up and moving, because in class, they're on their computers, they're listening to the teacher. A lot of times they only get 20 minutes for a recess. So they got
Yeah.
to be moving.
Yeah.
They need that outlet.
Yeah. And I bet they really appreciate you, because you're probably super fun. You probably have a great time with them too.
I really do try. Like this year, I mean, of course I follow my curriculum, and it's a little more lax now that we're in COVID situations and I have some restrictions and stuff. But
Yeah.
like early on, I had second grade. My school is second through fifth grade.
Okay.
So I had second grade, and they were like, you can only go outside with the kids. You can't, they can't touch any equipment, whatever. So like we literally just played games, and I listened to them, and we just came up with like creative things to do and just ran around. And I pitched this idea to my principal. I was like, why can't we paint things on the concrete for them to do? Like, we have a long jump. We did the floor is lava. So they love that. And
Cool.
even now at recess, all the kids use that. And they like, we have like, you have to jump over fishes, and there's more fishes as you go down the concrete and stuff. So it's awesome.
Well, tell me more about that. If somebody wanted to set that up, how would you set that up?
Well, really, I told my principal about the idea, and
Okay.
then I contacted. We have, I don't know, it's called PTO, our parents that help out at school.
Okay.
I contacted the president, and they were like, "Yeah, let's do this." So she got the volunteers, she got the paint. I helped with the paint situation, but we used road paint, like they paint the lines on the roads and
Yeah.
and parking lots.
Yeah.
And then I just sat down with her and I sketched out all the ideas. We made like a little obstacle course, and you can get a lot of the stuff off of Pinterest. We made so like the kids have to jump on one leg 5 times, spin in 4 circles, walk a line, like stuff like that. It works
Yeah.
on
Just make
different.
up whatever you want, right?
Right, totally.
Yeah.
And then we did like a long jump where they can stand or we can jump, and I did fun stuff with that. And we did floors lava where we painted rocks, and around the rocks was all red, so they have to hop from rock to rock technically without touching the lava.
Cool.
So
That's fun. I've seen actually a couple of these things on social media where somebody's drawn it out in chalk on the sidewalk, and then it's kind of fun for the amount of time that it lasts on the sidewalk, and then it just washes away. So that's awesome that you guys were actually able to paint it and then it lasts for a super long time, because it's a lot of work to do that too. We've set up an obstacle course just even on our driveway with chalk, and it takes a long time.
yeah, it gosh, it took us 3 days with like 8 volunteers each day just to kind of like And she and we had to like pressure wash the area first to make sure there wasn't leaves and stuff. So it just wouldn't blow away,
Yeah.
once we
Yeah.
painted it. And just like random things that I never really thought about. But that's what it was really nice to kind of work with her. And she's like, what if we did this? So it was really good. She also is my next door neighbor. So it was really
Oh, that's
cool.
awesome. Yeah. I
Yeah.
just have to give a shout out to all the teachers that are taking this extra time to come up with cool ways to keep the kids happy, because it's a lot of extra work for you guys. And so many of these different, we're all learning as we go, right? Because we get these
Yes.
new regulations and all of a sudden you have to figure things out on the fly. And I know that coaches are pretty good at this in general to figure out how they can adapt. Like if you're in the middle of a training session, if it's not going very well, you have to think on the fly and say, how could I do this better? Or what could I change? Or what's the mood of the kids even? And are they even into this, all this stuff? But for sure, teachers, you guys have been doing so much this past year. So thanks. If there's any other teachers that are listening, thank you guys. It's incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had to be super creative, but I think it's paid off. And I think a lot of teachers like didn't even know that they had it in them and they're coming up with some awesome ideas and the kids are loving it.
Cool. Let's go back a little bit to your youth years. And I would love to know, were you always on track for wanting to play soccer in college?
I don't know if I never really thought about it definitely until I was probably a junior or senior in high school. I
Okay.
always wanted at that point though, I knew I was like, well, I don't want to be done playing soccer after high school. Like I want to keep going and I didn't really know what that meant. Thankfully, I have an uncle who's a guidance counselor and he's also a basketball coach, he was a high school basketball coach. And he kind of told me, he was like, if you're serious about this, you got to make sure you're in shape. You got to get your name out there, and maybe start emailing people or gosh, did they even have email when we were in college?
I think it was just starting. That makes us
Yeah,
pretty dated there.
I think I literally, well, to be honest, I went to the Cal U summer soccer camp,
Yeah.
the ones that we used to coach.
Yeah.
And I went there, I think going into my senior year, and I was like, okay, if I want to play soccer in college, then like I got to make a good name for myself here. And I mean, it went okay. I was not fit. I think Lasky made us do, I remember this so well. My roommate at the time when we were at summer camp, she like was super homesick and she wanted to go home. So I was like up all night talking with her and I was so tired. We show up to, one of our 3 days and Lasky's like, kids were running the beep test. And I was like, what? And so me and goodness, I don't even remember how many other kids were in that session, but we ran the beep test and I only made it to level 9. I was like the third person to drop out and
And you're
I thought
really
I was going to
competitive.
puke.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was dying. I was like, wow, why can't I keep up with all these kids? I mean, skill wise, I was fine, but my fitness. So after that, I came home and I was like, I need to get on this. And my dad was like, well, just go to the track and run, right? What do you do in soccer? You run. I was like, okay. So I was just running all the time. I would wake up early and run and I would go to like our little morning fitness things that my high school soccer coach would have for us and I'd be like the only person and I would run with her essentially through a neighborhood.
Nice. And
Yeah, so
that's
it was
something
kind of
that we
cool.
never had. We never had coaches that would do extra training with us because our schedules are different than the way that the high schools in the US are designed. So I don't know, the schedule lineup was just so short for us that we were basically having tryouts within a week we were playing and then within 2 weeks we were done. So I mean that's an
Dang.
exaggeration, but for the most part our high school sessions were so small that you really couldn't develop a team in the way that I feel like is happening now because there's so many different teams that are travel teams and
Right.
especially in the US, you've got all of these Olympic development programs as well. So the caliber of what was coming out of the United States was blowing my mind when I was there. And then I was like, okay, so then I think now that's been recognized. And it's like, how come we have so many of these US athletes that are developing so much faster than in Canada? And now it's happened. So now we've got, all of these different extra things that you can sign up for, but it wasn't just that we could take it for granted where we could just show up one day and coach had this strength and conditioning program for us. That didn't exist for us. So that's nice that your
Yeah.
coach was actually trying to make it happen for you.
I mean, it wasn't fancy. It was literally us just going for a run through the
Yeah.
neighborhood. But I mean, even think about it now, like from the time when we were in college, they have so much more access to
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
know.
we had literally what, a weight room and
But
athletic trainers.
yeah, and our athletic trainers were awesome because obviously that program was within our university. So
Yeah.
they're putting out some really, really good care and also time commitment. So those
Hmm.
athletic trainers were on it. And obviously I was in the program, so I know exactly what it was, what you needed to do in order to graduate from that program. And we had a lot of people that dropped out. So yeah, if you had somebody working with your team, they were there and they were showing up. As for the
Yeah.
gym, though, don't you remember walking into the weight room and looking at all the equipment and just being like, "This is designed for football." That's
Yeah, for
that's what
sure.
I thought. And now, from a different perspective, obviously, so many years later, I look at it and be like, "Oh, we missed such an amazing opportunity." The equipment in there was so amazing, but it was intimidating. So I felt like we missed a chance to get the most out of it because we just didn't know what to do in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, oh gosh, I don't remember her name, but she played volleyball. I will never forget when I think it was you, me, Anne-Marie, and I don't remember her name, but the four of us went to our just regular gym at school. And she showed me this bicep thing. And I was like, that's what you're supposed to do with those weights? Like, I had no idea. And I just remember that. And I was like, oh, cool. So, I mean, I didn't even know what to do with the weights other than what Lasky or Nikki showed us, to be honest.
I remember going downstairs in that gym that was accessible to all of the entire campus could go there. We
Right.
had obviously like an athlete gym, but then this other
Yeah.
I remember being in there. I went downstairs, which was like a dungeon. It was dark. It had like one window in it. And there
It
was this
smelled so bad too.
yeah, it was gross. And so there you go. That kind of turned me off a little bit right there too. I was like, I don't know if I want to be in here. But then I looked around, I was like, okay, there's not too many people in here. I can do this. And then I look over and there's a couple of the football guys that are lifting and I started doing some stuff and he comes over to me and he's like, you know what these two notches are on the mirror? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he had these two lines that were drawn on the mirror. And he's like, that's the size of my back. That's what you're aiming for. And I was like, I'm out of here.
Oh gosh. What the heck?
Like, who is this guy? And it wasn't even like, I don't know, it was just really, it wasn't even like he was hitting on me or anything like that. It was just like, this is what we do down here. And
It
it
was
was
intimidating.
yes, yes. So anyway, from those kinds of days where, that weight room was an intimidating thing and maybe there weren't a whole lot of young female athletes that were taking advantage of those spaces because they were intimidated. I'm really happy with where things have gone to now and that the caliber of not only fitness and strength and knowledge and technical skills, it's all gotten so good. And so it's really, really fun to be watching youth sport and college sport now.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. They've come a very, very long way. Even with like recovery type stuff, it's crazy.
Yeah. So, would you go back? Would you want to like if you had all of the things that you could access now and go back,
Oh gosh.
would you do it again?
I mean, do I get to be young again?
Yeah,
Because
you
I
get to
don't
be
know
young
if
again.
my okay, sure. Yeah, why not? I don't think I could do it now. I'm gonna need all that recovery, the what do they call that? Compression things and stuff.
It would be 80-20. It'd be 20% on and 80% recovery.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to run now like only 3 days a week instead of like I used to be able to just smash out 5 days because my knees hurt so bad. I have to
Uh,
take a little break.
well, let's move into what's going on now. Well, actually, no, we can't move on to what's going on now because I really want to know about your travel time. So your husband is, tell me if this is right. He was in the Marine Corps. Does he still consider himself to be active as well?
Kind of. So he was in the Marine Corps for 11 years. He's considered inactive at the moment, but
Okay.
he will be fully, completely out, no obligations to anything. They can't email him if something comes up and ask him to be somewhere as of July 31st of this year.
Oh,
So,
wow.
or
Okay.
July 1st, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So,
And when you guys got married, did you kind of know that your life was going to be up and moving quite a bit?
Yeah, well, pretty much. I mean, that was part of the fun of it. When I met him, he was at the Naval Academy, and I was teaching outside of Washington D.C., living in Annapolis, Maryland, where the Naval Academy is, and of course, my soccer team, my local soccer team that I played on, was sponsored by one of the popular bars there. So, we were there, we saw all the people in uniform and stuff, and it was like, ooh, look at that. And, I met him and I kind of knew, like, I guess a little bit what to expect, but really I had no idea. We got married a year after he graduated. So he was already doing like the officer training stuff for the Marine Corps. And then gosh, a month after we got married, we packed up everything and went to North Carolina, which was his very first duty station. And I mean, I didn't have a job. We bought a house one weekend when we went down there, like 2 weeks before we moved there. He had no idea what to expect from his job, really.
Yeah.
And, we move in, we get everything settled. He goes to his very first day of work and he comes home and he's like, so I have bad news. My boss told me that we're deploying to
Oh,
Iraq for a whole year in January. And
oh
this
my goodness.
was July. And I was like, okay, that's cool. It's 6 months away, whatever. And he's like, so before you deploy, you have to have so many hours of training. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, we'll just go with punches. So
Yeah.
that's what we did. And I mean, oh gosh, pretty much the entire time that he was in the Marines, except for when we were in California, that was probably the best duty station. He was gone a lot and I
Yeah.
just kind of dealt with it. And I sort of found my support system. And a lot of times that was a soccer team that I was playing on or whatever was flexible. Luckily, I found a job everywhere we went and I just made the best of it, to be honest. I kind of went into it like every time we moved, I was like, I'm only going to live here for 2 to 3 years. So, if somebody asked me to go for a hike, I'm like, heck yeah, I want to see that. Let's do it.
Right.
So
So you're
I tried to take advantage of the time that we were there.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to be hard because you can only set short-term goals at that point as well, because you know that you're going to be up and moving again. And it also does force you, just like what you said, to live in the present moment and just say, okay, let's do this. I may never be back here again, so let's do it all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I never really thought about long term goals, honestly, until we moved back from Japan into
Yeah.
North Carolina. I was like, whoa, I can do something rather than like longer than 3 years. This is fantastic.
Yeah, but part of what I wanted to talk to you about was I know it's hard to meet adults and become friends. It's kind of a weird thing as adults to become buddies. You know, kids, you look at them on the playground and they just ease their way into a circle and then they just start playing and then they just go off and then they're good. It's a completely different scenario. Imagine a grown I do this all the time. I'll look at a different setup and I'll say, okay, so now if an adult were to do exactly what that kid just did, it would be hilarious. Like there would be a lot of comedic moments where it would just be like some kid on the outside of a group of adults that are just chatting and that person just hovers and stands there until somebody lets them into the circle. And it's really weird to meet people as adults. So sport, you said wherever you went pretty much you would join something.
Yeah, that was sort of my go-to, I guess. And a lot of times, like wherever we went, there was a lot of military spouses, kind of in the same boat as me. So that was one thing. And we tried to make friends that way. But usually we would get somewhere and I would get the house organized and unpacked. And then I'm automatically Googling like adult soccer league or, whatever.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. And even when we did our first move to North Carolina, I sat down one day and I just like started Googling elementary schools that were close to high schools because
Okay.
I knew I wanted to keep coaching. And so I mean, this was before email was probably fine, but I didn't even email the principal. I literally called and they're like, what grade do you want to teach? And I was like, I don't care, but I've taught fifth grade for, this many years. And they're like, oh, we're interviewing today for a fifth grade teacher. Can you come in an hour? And I was
Wow.
like, "Are you serious?" And she was like, "Yes." And I was like, "All right, I'll be there." I was like, "Listen, I don't have a printer, so I can't technically print my resume." And they were like, "Email it to me and we'll print it off for everybody." And I was
Wow.
like, "Sweet." And I got that job. And then there was a high school literally, goodness, like 200 yards away. So I walked my happy butt over to the high school after the interview. And I was like, "Hey, I'm new to the area, hoping to be a soccer coach." And they're like, "Okay, leave your number." Athletic director called me like 2 days later and was like, "Yeah, we need an assistant. Are you game?" I'm like, "I'm in." So it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. So all of these years of playing sport totally paid off. You got work, you got you
It
got
sure
friends.
did.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And then
Yep.
your daughter came along throughout these years and then she was on the road with you guys. So how was that for her up and going all over the place? What did you guys do in order to help her adapt?
She's like a champion. She can fit in anywhere. I mean, I don't know. I just tried to make sure that like our neighborhood had a lot of kids wherever we moved. Thankfully, she was born in California when we were stationed there. And at the time, Zeb was just in grad school. So it was really nice. Like he was home a lot more than he had been before. And he found out we were going to Washington, D.C. So I had some high school friends and we had some other friends, from the time that I lived there after college. And my one high school friend was like, "You have to live in our neighborhood. This is like Mayberry, and there's so many kids." And so we went and looked at it, and it was awesome. And it was like automatic. Harper just fit in. Like all the kids in our little area were her exact age, and it was great. And then when we went to Japan, kind of the same thing. Like people were just very nice, and they're like, "Oh, you should look into these preschools." And we did, and she loved it. And it was like, she just, no, almost no matter where we were, she just adjusted really well.
Yeah.
So we are very lucky that she's kind of flexible like that.
Yeah. If you could give any advice to a coach that's maybe coaching somebody that's new to the area, what would you say would be helpful to make them feel included?
Just kind of that, like help them feel included, like, even invite them to do whatever the sport is. Just say, "Hey, we're going to this pizza place, it's our favorite place, maybe you guys should meet us there after practice," or something like that, just so that it helps them feel included. And then they learn about a cool pizza place. So just small little things like that definitely help.
When you guys were in Japan, I know, tell me a little bit about how it works because I just assumed that you would be immersed in the culture, but it's not really that way because you guys live on a base, right?
Well, so we actually got to live out in town,
Okay, so you
but
did actually.
yeah, we lived in a condo off base. But yeah, when we got there, everything was base related. So like, we had to stay in a hotel on the base, we had to do a bunch of things, and it was all military, Marine Corps, base related. But then once we found out that there wasn't a lot of housing left on base, we got to live out in town, and we were super excited. And it turned out really cool. We had a lot of American and military people in our neighborhood, I guess. There was a couple of Japanese families that were very nice, but it was very nice because for me, we had lots of friends on base, and they automatically had neighbors. The kids would just run out of the house and play. That was great. Like we couldn't really do that, I guess. But I got to go to the Japanese market more than they did, essentially, because they lived so close to the commissary, which was on base, which
Okay.
is like a big grocery store, where I would be like, "You know what? Let me go see if I can find this at our neighborhood market across the street or whatever." So that part was really cool. And then I got to meet the locals that way. Definitely a little bit of a language barrier. I don't speak Japanese, but I got really good at charades.
Yeah.
And almost everywhere we went where you had to order something, they had the pictures. So you could just point to it.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was just, at first I was really upset that we were going so far from the US, and I was like, "Gosh, I just don't think this is like the best time. Maybe when Harper gets a little older this would be better." But it turned out to be like the best experience. Once we got there and got acclimated to everything, I really, Zeb was working so much and he had to go to Korea a lot. So like the opportunities to travel and just to learn about that culture, and I mean, I had never really thought like, oh, one day I'm going to grow up and go to Japan. I never
Right.
really thought that that was going to happen. So it was just really, really, really cool.
Cool. Did you notice any similarities? So if you had a kid in Japan as opposed to a kid in the US, what would you say is quite universal between the way that kids are in general?
And we lived in Okinawa, Japan, which is an island. Gosh, it's actually kind of closer to like Taiwan and China, but it's quite far from Japan, the mainland of Japan. They had the coolest playgrounds.
Oh, really?
Anytime, yes. Like it was like, how did they even think about this? They have these roller slides, and I mean, they would be so high, and the kids would just, and they would have like these huge turns. It was the best. And there was this one playground by one of the bases that was probably about 20 minutes away from us. And it had like it looked like a circus tent, but the kids could climb on it and jump on it and then slide down. Like they couldn't get hurt, but it
Yeah,
was crazy. I was like, how did anybody even think about this? How did they engineer this? But
right.
it was so cool. And there was actually like websites like with maps of how to find, because they didn't have addresses, so you couldn't like Google map it. So it was like literally an adventure trying to find a cool playground.
And how were parents at the playground? Were they hands off? Were they just kind of let the kids do whatever? Or were they kind of in fear of what the kids might do on these?
No, I feel like it was very laid back. I mean, of course, if the kids were younger, they were like helping them, but
Yeah.
no, there was just a lot of parents sitting on benches and like eating their lunch, and the kids just having at it and having so much fun and playing. And that's the other thing, like almost any place we went, even like when we traveled to Hong Kong, I mean, language, of course, was a big barrier. Even I would say probably that was one of the places where a lot of people spoke English, but we found this cool neighborhood right by our hotel, and they had a really awesome playground. And Harper played there for like 2 hours. She didn't even speak to anybody but like the kids, but they all just kind of came together and like organized this game and played hide and go seek essentially.
That's
And
awesome.
like yeah, if you ask her like, "Oh, Harper, what was your favorite part of Hong Kong?" She would go, "Oh, that playground by the hotel."
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we went to Hong Kong Disney. We went up this cool tram, up a giant mountain to Victoria Peak. Like we went on a junk boat, which is this really cool Chinese boat, like in the middle of the Hong Kong harbor. And that was her favorite memory.
It's so cool. So it didn't matter that the language was an issue. The kids just played.
Yeah, and even in Japan, and we went to South Korea as well, like they just played. And there were parks everywhere. It was so cool. Like kids were playing baseball and soccer and basketball, or, even sports I may not have even seen before, but kids were just playing and outside. It was great.
And do you notice a difference, obviously now with COVID, but pre-COVID, would you have thought that that was different for where you were seeing things happening in the United States?
I mean, a little bit. I feel like the Japanese school structure is very creative, I guess I would say. Like,
Okay.
I think that they had to have 3 hours of PE a week,
Okay. So that was really
where
important.
yeah, like the kids, anytime I drove by a school, there was something organized happening outside of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, even little smaller kids, even at 7 in the morning when I'm driving to go teach on base, like there were kids outside playing, some were cleaning, some were, it was awesome.
And that's something that I've heard, that cleaning is actually part of what the kids do in the school.
Yeah. So to my knowledge, I mean, I taught in a Department of Defense, meaning it was like for the military kids mainly.
Okay.
I taught on base. So we didn't really follow the same structure, but we had a lot of kids whose parents, mom or dad or whatever, was Japanese. And they would always make us, well, I had one student, his mom was Okinawan, and she would always make me food like every Friday. And it was the best thing in the world.
I bet you miss it.
Um, what? Yeah. Sometimes she would make me cookies. Sometimes she would make me like noodles, and oh, it was so good. But anyway, he was like my go-to Okinawan. Like I would always ask him stuff because his mom is from there, his dad's from Florida, but he grew up there, and he was what, fifth grade, you're like 11 or 10. So like that was his whole life. So he kind of told me a lot about the culture and stuff, and just from the locals that we became friends with and talked with. But yeah, they essentially are responsible for cleaning up their own school, meaning like maybe third grade this week was in charge of cleaning the hallways and outside.
Okay.
And second grade was in charge of the bathroom sinks or, something like that. And I thought, how cool would it be to take that much responsibility? Like when you're a kid, don't mess up, don't put your gum there because I'm going to have to clean it up later. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
Like,
Yeah, you would respect it more.
yeah. So it was very respectful, very responsible. It was awesome.
So if you could implement any of that into what you're doing now, have you done anything that you've kind of learned from abroad and brought into what you teach now?
I mean, I've tried to. It's definitely different living in the US and trying to bring some of that stuff. I don't know. That's a good question.
That's okay. You don't have to know. I just think that sometimes sometimes when you're in the middle of something, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to use this. Even in anything that I've learned throughout university or post grad or whatever, I've always been able to think about how I can use this for later. And then you forget that you learned it, and then it just kind of goes on with something else. And when you're living in a spot, then you kind of do, you get immersed in what becomes normal there. And then just as quickly you leave it, and then you forget all of that behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. How are your students doing with the pandemic?
I think they're doing okay. I mean, you can tell that some kids are over it, like I'm sure most adults, but we are going to school. Well, I'm in school 4 days a week technically. So as of right now, we have two what we call cohorts. The kids with last names from A to L come on Monday and Tuesday, and then they deep clean our schools on Wednesday. And then the kids with L to Z last names come Thursday, Friday. So I get to be at school 4 days a week, but they only get to be there 2 days a week. And then they're home doing virtual stuff 3 days a week. So I think a lot of kids definitely want to be in school. I don't know. I feel like some of them are kind of struggling that they have to be home and have to be responsible for, doing their schoolwork at home. I know parents are doing the best that they can. And I mean, even Harper, my daughter, she's here 3 days a week. And I try and check her work Thursday and Friday before she turns it in because, some days she's like laser focused on it. She gets all of her work done by noon. She eats lunch and then we'll go outside and play with her friends. And other days she's struggling and doesn't even want to do math and doesn't get it done till like 1 o'clock and calls me crying. So, I mean, I just feel like it's kind of up and down. Like they get happy when they're in school and then, they're at home and sometimes they can't always get the questions that they have answered and
Yeah.
they feel like they're struggling with that. But
And with you being a PE teacher, do you feel like you have a lot of room to boost their mood and to come up with ways to kind of break that kind of depressive funk that they're constantly feeling?
I mean, I'm trying to. So we have I guess it's like a technology platform. It's called Schoology. I don't know
Okay.
if you guys have something. We used to have Google Classroom.
Yeah.
But now we have this newer thing called Schoology. And essentially the kids have courses, they have to keep up with them in the platform. So I have my own and I assign, I mean, I say assign, but it's very loose. They don't technically have to do it if they don't have time. But every week I try and come up with new workouts for them to do because the number one thing is, we hear, oh, I'm so bored at home. I get my work done by 9. And then what am I supposed to do?
Hmm.
So, or they're playing video games or whatever. So I've tried to create like these really fun workouts and I get a lot of my content from YouTube
Hmm.
and I try and make them themed.
Okay.
So like last week I did a Harry Potter theme one and the kids loved it. I got a lot of good feedback and it was like Harry Potter yoga and Harry Potter hit workouts
Okay.
and I it wasn't named this but I named it like get abs like Harry Potter and it was like this 4-minute guy dressed up like Harry Potter, but it was child appropriate and he did different ab workouts. And I was like, okay. So I mean, they thought it was hilarious and they loved it. I've done superhero ones and Disney workouts and like Thanksgiving themed ones and Christmas and stuff. So they really like it. And then it also gives me, if for some reason I show up and they're like, "Hey, you can't use your gym today." I
Yeah.
have those to fall back on and I can do that in the classroom with them if I have to. So
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And then you get probably more of a buy-in because the kids might be excited. It's not so much the workout, but it's the excitement behind the creative side of it.
right, yes. And so this quarter I have fifth grade and they were like, "Coach, your stuff is so geared toward the third graders." I was like, I don't, where are you getting that from? So I said, okay, fine. Then you give me some suggestions and I'll come up with some workouts. And I don't know why, but have you seen Cobra Kai on Netflix?
I know about it, but I haven't seen it. No.
Okay. Well, I got like 8 requests for me to make a Cobra Kai themed
Okay.
workout. And I was like, who's letting you watch this stuff? But yeah, I mean, I was like, okay, cool. So, I actually found some old Tybo stuff and I'm going to
Yeah.
put that on there.
Oh my
Yeah.
God,
So
that'll be awesome. I had those VHS cassettes.
we did that.
Billy Blanks,
Well,
wasn't that his name?
Billy Blanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should see. I mean, I never really thought about it, but like I found some stuff on YouTube and I was like, dang, that is definitely from the 90s, like the outfit that he's wearing and some parts.
Yeah.
So it was pretty funny.
Well, that's great advice. So if anybody is struggling to get kids to move, just to try and just change things up just a tiny bit by making it more fun for the kids. And I think those are great ideas, just coming up with a theme. Good idea.
Thanks.
Yeah. What would you say if you could give any advice to coaches? What would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned over your years from traveling the world, traveling the US, playing yourself, coaching yourself, and also teaching?
A lot of times I felt like, and I didn't even realize it, but I just needed like that team to feel like I was part of the team
Yeah.
almost. You know what I mean? Every time we moved, it always felt like, oh, I found a soccer team. Okay, everything's fine now. But I feel like sometimes kids need that too. So just to make them feel accepted and a part of a team is awesome. Definitely you got to have fun with them and build their confidence. A lot of times, especially with PE, some kids are like, "Oh, I hate PE. I'm not athletic." And I'm like, has nothing, you can have fun, right? I said, as long as if you give it 100%, then that's all I can ever ask for. So even if you don't think you can dribble a soccer ball, can you walk down this, blue line with a soccer ball between your feet? Yeah, sure, that's easy. Okay, now jog. And before you know it, they're dribbling and laughing and having fun. And so it's just little things like that. Like they just need a little bit of a confidence boost every once in a while. But I mean, the fun aspect, especially, is a big one. And then just come up with creative ways, like we were talking before, like instead of it being a punishment for getting out of a game, if they get out, make it competitive, quick, juggle 15 times, and then you can come back in and
Yeah.
steal a ball for him. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just like little things like that. Just try to get them pumped up for the next thing.
Yeah. That's
Encourage
awesome.
them. Yeah.
Encourage. Yeah. Well, your students must be, I would think that they must be so pumped whenever they get to see you because you bring that energy and that sense of play. And I mean, even just looking at you right now, no one can see you because we're going to put this on audio, but man, you look exactly the same as when we were playing. So obviously, keeping yourself moving and keeping yourself playing like a kid is keeping you young and active yourself too. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I think because I taught fifth grade in the classroom for, gosh, 12 years, I guess.
Yeah.
And this is only my second year technically as a PE teacher. Like that's my title.
Yeah.
And so it was a huge, huge stress reliever when I got to be like that strict teacher, having to tell everybody like, you guys owe me homework, to being kind of that fun person, I guess, if that, I don't know if my principal would like me to say that I'm fun, but like when they come in, I mean, there is definitely a mutual respect. When they come in, they know I have 40 minutes to show you this and to do this. And if we can get it done, we're going to do some fun stuff afterwards. So,
Yeah.
they know that that's how I roll. So they respect that. And then, I respect their time too and try and get as much done as we possibly can, but
Yeah.
still be creative and fun.
Yeah. And just to wrap it up, I think that's the goal of long-term athletic development, is to make sure that these kids have fun, they enjoy it, and then they want to do it lifelong. So exactly like what you're doing, as an adult moving into new places, you just wanted to keep moving and still be a part of a team and keep that going, instead of just saying, you know what, that was crappy when I was a kid. I hated sport. Like my coach rode me all the time, and kids were mean and girls were cliquey and all the rest of it. And so if we can create that environment where it just feels so good, and then you keep doing it lifelong, it's awesome. So I think you're a
Yeah.
great example of what sport can do, not only just as a young person, but then also as an adult too. So thanks so much for sharing. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
Yeah. One day we'll get together in person again. But until then, I'll see you through the screen and it'll be great.
Yes, I agree.
Well, if anybody wants to check out these episodes, you can always go to my website, which is rihannaposkin.com. You can find out all the information there. And thanks again. I will see you guys on the next episode. Have a good day. Bye.
See ya.